It's the beginning of February. It's February 2nd today, and this video is going to be all about evergreens. So during the winter months in a tropical style garden, a lot of people think that if it's tropical style, it's going to be completely flat in the winter, very little plants, and basically it's all about the summer. So although the main show is about the summer, because that's when you get the best growth out of things like bananas and cannas and everything, uh, in the winter it doesn't have to be dull and boring and flat. So you can still use lots of plants to give different contrasts and different textures. And luckily with subtropical style gardening, there is a lot of options available, from palms to things like Fatsias and Yuccas and cordylines, all those kind of architectural plants. So in this video, I am going to just tour around the garden and show you some of the evergreens which are best to use to give various winter interest. So the first plant we're looking at today is the Fatsia japonica, which is the standard green version of the Fatsia, and it has amazing leaves which have got a kind of leathery type texture to them, and they grow pretty big. This one's about 2.5 meters tall, I would say, and they generally prefer shade. They can tolerate some sunshine, but they generally like a shady spot in the garden. There is different versions of Fatsias. I will show you some other ones now. So Fatsia polycarpa has again got amazing leaves. These ones have got very long, kind of finger-like bits to their leaves. Again, it likes a shady position, but apparently this one can stand a little bit more sunlight. It has a matte leaf, and I'm not sure how big it grows. I presume it's slightly smaller than the other Fatsia japonica. You can actually see the contrast of the leaf behind there between the gloss and the matte. There's also other Fatsias available. Fatsia variegata, which has creamy bits on the leaves, but is mostly green. I use this in pots either side of my back door. Fatsia camouflage, which has got amazing kind of different tones of greens on its leaves. This particular plant is very small, a new addition to my garden. And we also have Fatsia spider's web. So as I say, all good for shady positions in the garden. They have large leaves and a good contrast against other plants. Here we have a Yucca. I think this one is Gloriosa, which is a standard greeny blue coloured Yucca. They generally are very architectural plants. They prefer a kind of slightly dry position. They're very, very frost hardy, so no worrying about that. Here we have a smaller Yucca variegata. So you can see it's got pink tinge to the leaves, as well as the variegated sort of cream against the green. Here we have a much older Yucca, which has got the classic kind of 3 stem in there. This one's got slightly droopy leaves to it, but is a really good option, and again very architectural. Here we have Yucca rostrata, which has got very fine leaves, very architectural, and this has got a kind of very silvery blue kind of leaf to it. Just behind, I think it's Yucca Thompsonia, which has slightly black tips to its leaves, but very similar shaped leaf, slightly less bluey silver on there, but can be used in a variety of settings, either in amongst other plants or like I've got here in a more kind of deserty, arid type section. They do get quite big. They'll at least be about a metre or possibly a metre and a half wide, and they form like basically a massive pom-pom shape. We also have, I think this is Yucca Fireguard or something like that. You can see it's got very yellow leaves to it, and again still really hardy, and these ones are a little bit smaller than the other ones, but you can see to the side here that huge other type of yucca, which I think is a gloriosa again. So palms are a very good option to give structure in the garden. They provide evergreen foliage, and they come in various different shapes. You've got the Butea odorata here, which has got a very short, stocky kind of stump to it. And then you've got the classic feather palm leaves coming out. These are a great option for us UK gardeners, as they're generally good down to about -10, especially when they are big specimens like this one. And they give that kind of fountain shape, and they're very easy to maintain, just feeding them just standard sort of palm fertilizer. So yeah, very good option for the garden. Here we have the Trachycarpus fortunei. This is a sort of standard version. It's not crossed with anything. A very good option again for the UK garden. I think they're hardy down to about -16 or 18 Celsius, which is pretty much, I think it's only really Scotland that gets those lowest temperatures. They will form a very tall trunk with the foliage on the top, and yeah, very easy to grow. If they're planted when they're young as well, they tend to get going really quickly, and you get kind of bushy foliage towards the bottom of the plant. Whereas if you buy them a little bit more mature, you tend to have a very sort of straight trunk with a little bit of foliage at the top. They take a little bit more time to establish, but they are a very good option. Here is another Fortunei, which I bought a couple of years ago. Got the classic hairy trunk. This one's wrapped with some fairy lights for Christmas. And you can see what they call the spear, which is in the middle of the palm. So this is the new leaves coming up through the middle. So yeah, that's basically how these grow. And they're really good for planting underneath as well, because obviously once they get up off the ground, you've then got the foliage is higher up, so you can underplant with them really well. This is a Trachycarpus wagnerianus, and this has stiffer leaves and generally will form a very tall, slender trunk. The foliage isn't as big on top, and with this particular palm, it's very good for windy conditions because the leaves are stiffer. Again, you can kind of, once these get going, you can underplant them as well, or they actually are doing really well in these pots here at the moment. There is some fancier palms that you can use, which is a Breja Marta, I think this one is. It's a Mexican fan palm, very sort of silvery blue foliage, but is a little bit harder to look after. It doesn't want to be too wet in winter. It's reasonably hardy, I think, to about -7, -8 on there. At the moment, I've put a bit of protection around this pot just to stop loads of water going in the top. So it's just to keep it a little bit on the drier side. There is other palms available. It's a Trithanax, which is a very slow growing palm. As good as a curiosity, and they are super hardy, but they're quite rare and quite expensive to get hold of. So might not be the best option for the UK gardener. And then we've got the Camerops humilis. I think this is a Cerifera. So this one's got the bluey foliage. And these are the Mediterranean fan palms, which have basically tall, tallish trunks, up to about kind of 6 foot. And then they've got the classic fan palm leaf to them. So this is the bluey silver version. This is the green version, which is just the Camerops humilis. And this is the Volcano, which has got very tight foliage. Grows a little bit shorter, I think, than the others. But again, pretty hardy, easy to look after. So maybe a good option on that one. There are other types of palms. This one is a Phoenix canariensis, which is a large date palm. It will get absolutely massive. This one's waiting to go in the ground, but they generally, I think they're hardy to about -8 maximum. I've planted mine underneath this yew tree, which will provide some overhead protection. So in time, this will be a huge palm and will take up a large amount of space here. But they're not particularly frost hardy when young. So they're okay to kind of bring into a greenhouse during the winter months. But and they're quite good as sort of pot plants when they're small out on the patio and things. But they can be a little bit of a pain to kind of keep looking good, because if you have really cold temperatures, the leaves look really tatty and burnt by the frost. And yeah, not a great option unless you live kind of near the coast or in kind of London or a very sheltered position. Generally in the south of the country, they do okay on that. And I suppose the last option really is the this one is like a Mexican fan palm, similar to the silver one, but it's a Washingtonia robusta, and they're kind of frost hardy to about -2, -3 without the leaves kind of browning off. But generally, again, consider these a bit more of a kind of pot plant that you put in the greenhouse during winter and bring out for the summer. So they do grow rapidly. So if the leaves do burn off and the main trunk's okay, it will throw out new leaves quite quickly in the spring. So yeah, a good option for summer interest with a palm that's got kind of softer type leaves. Another option for the evergreen garden is here. We have a Phormium. This one's called Bronze Baby. They come in various different colours. There's kind of the bronze colour like this one. The green one here, which is a Tanax variety. So these do get big. They can get up to 3 meters tall. But the thing is with Phormiums, they are sort of bushy plants. They're like a bushy shrub, almost like a large grass that you can put in lots of different positions. Very, very easy to grow. And they're very good as sort of contrast plants. They're kind of hard to beat, really. See here, this is another one of the bronze babies. One down here, which is, I think it's called Jester. And you can see it's got lovely striped pink and green leaves. And they do come in various kind of pinks as well. There's variegated versions with green and cream on them. But yeah, really good group of plants, those. Most of them grow to about 1 meter tall, and with the bigger ones going up to kind of 3 meters. So you just got to be a bit careful where you plant those. Bamboos are another option, generally better in pots because they don't particularly, well, they can't spread if they're in pots. So here we have a Philistachus nigra, which is the black stem bamboo. So I do have this one in the ground, but I have a bamboo barrier to stop it spreading. and that one's a newly planted one. You can see with bamboos, there's one here which has got much bigger leaf to it, different coloured kind of stem. This type which has got more of a yellow stem to it. I think that's Philistachus oris or something like that. So yeah, good in kind of planters and pots, and they're brilliant for kind of screening, but you do have to be very careful what variety of bamboo you actually plant in the ground, as they can be extremely invasive unless you're going to be out there with a spade digging off the runners quite frequently. Some of them do get massive, but a good option for some people. So Mahonias are another one which generally are a bit underrated actually. The standard kind of Mahonia that you see most places has more of a holly leaf. This one is called soft caress, so it has a very soft leaf to it. And yeah, it's just a really good architectural plant and a really easy shrub to keep. And it has like yellow flowers which are sort of highly scented. So this is the best version to go for, the soft caress, though it is quite a slow grower. This is the standard sort of Mahonia charity. You can see all these little berries and flowers appearing on the top of it. But super spiky leaves. These are really, really sharp on there. So I'd just go for the soft caress version if you can. So Mahonias generally like more sun than shade, but really bulletproof plant, very easy to keep. Euphorbias are another option, apart from the negative that they have quite sticky sap to them, which is an irritant. You've got this type of Euphorbia here, which has got very large leaves on it, quite an open habit. You can see the new stems coming up from the base of the plant. They do get quite big, so they can get kind of 1.5 meters tall by a couple of meters wide. Prefers a sunny position, but really good foliage with that one. This is Euphorbia orphenii, which you can see already, even in February, starting to flower, which is amazing, really. They can take really deep levels of cold, and they are very easy to look after once established. Another thing that they don't like is they don't like being dug up and moved if they are reasonably mature. So this type specimen, if I was to dig that up, it probably wouldn't survive. But if they're about 1 foot tall or a couple of feet at most, they should transplant very easily. Choisias are another option for sunny positions. They like it quite dry. They don't really need a lot of looking after. They are super reliable, and you can just about see this one's trying to flower or bud up to ready to flower. But yeah, good option. They're evergreen as well, and they do have a funny smell about them. Some people love it, some people hate it, but they are the type of shrub that you can hack back quite hard, and then they just regrow again quite easily. They get a few meters high by a few meters wide, so quite big plants. But if you want to keep it small, you can just keep it trimmed. Just keep it trimmed every year, and that will keep it smaller. Another shrub which is good for height and it's got decent sized leaves is the Elaeagnus Bengii. This is a standard green version, but you can get it with variegation on it, which is got a nice contrast to it. Again, very easy to keep. You can trim it back really hard and it just keeps growing. Similar to the Elaeagnus is the Prunus lusitanica, which is a Portuguese laurel. It has kind of red little bits to the new growths. The new buds generally are kind of red in colour, and they're really good, slow growing evergreen, and they do get quite tall. And this one's probably at least 3 meters tall, but easy to keep under control, and you can grow it as a hedge or as a kind of specimen plant, kind of on its own, or as a kind of background. So moving on from shrubs, we have kind of evergreen grasses. We've got the black grass here next to a carex, so it produces nice contrast. And grasses are very good actually for low growing interest. There is a lot that are evergreen, and there's a few that are not, but very easy to look after. And as long as you go for quite a tidy variety, they stay looking good. They won't look too tatty then. Generally I use these kind of grasses, the edges of borders, just to create a kind of softer edge on there. Just make sure that if you do get a different variety of grass for the edge of a border, that it is actually not going to get too big and block your pathway. I do use a few evergreen ferns to give kind of winter interest as well. See, there's low growing ones, medium growing ones. These ferns look pretty good at the moment. And although there's things like shuttlecock ferns which will come out later on in the season, it's actually really good to have ferns even in winter, because they just soften the borders and give a nice edge to it. Particularly good in kind of jungle garden type settings, and yeah, easy to keep. They like shady conditions, so it's a good alternative to a lot of the grasses which generally prefer a more sunny location. Lots of different textures available. You see there's a fern hiding under here, looking really good because it's not got frosted at all. Frost can make some of them look a little bit tatty, but ultimately it's not just nice to have something there to look at during the winter months. Quite a large version here. Again, if we look at the back here, interesting textures. So hopefully those particular plant groups and plants that I've mentioned, you can have a look online, see what's available, but they're all pretty easy to get hold of. Just needs a little bit of research usually, especially if you want a particular variety, if it's a bit rarer. But ultimately I got a lot of these from either local garden centres, or online is always a good option, although you can't always see the plant that you get delivered. But if you're not too fussed about exactly what it looks like, and you just want, say, a 6-foot palm or a 4-foot Fatsia or something, they will all do pretty well. But you see, by mixing all these groups together, you then get all the interest of the different leaf shapes and colours and contrasts, and that's essentially forms the background of an exotic garden. And then it's up to you to then just add additional kind of the summer kind of bedding type plants and things like that, which will basically make a very good garden in the winter. It will make it into a fantastic garden for summer interest. So hopefully you found that video useful, and don't forget to subscribe and click the like button. It helps me out loads, and we're starting to get a bit more traction on the channel now, so a lot more interest and a lot more questions, which is always good to have. And I will see you on the next video, which will actually be an update on the front garden on that big project, just to see where I'm at with that. Got a few more bits to finish off in the next week, and yeah, then that video will be ready and I'll do a proper tour of the finished kind of front garden. So yeah, looking forward to doing that video, and as always, if you've got any questions, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.